All righty, I hunted down the quote from Darwin, which occurred in 1871. So this is 150 years ago. This is a full 80 years before the discovery of the DNA molecule. I'm sorry, the double helix, the DNA that won two people the Nobel Prize, I think. Frederick Hoyle and Francis Crick, I think, were the co-discoverers. They thought they understood how complex life was. And then they discovered the double helix. And they went, oh, we weren't even close. And so when Darwin made this quote, he had absolutely no idea of DNA, RNA, none of that. The internal workings of the cell, this magnificent little factory, this incredibly complex factory. Your eye is no more complex than the cells that it consists of. Neither is anything else in your body. And so he wrote this, even in his limited understanding of the complexities of life. He understood how difficult it is to explain this. And this was his quote, 1871, 12 years after he published the first edition of The Origin of Species. It is often said that all the conditions for the first production of a living organism are now present, which could ever have been present. Get back to that. But if, and oh, what a big if, there it is, he knows, we could conceive in some warm little pond. He's just thinking out loud, extrapolating. Some warm little pond with all sorts of ammonia and phosphoric salts, light, heat, electricity, etc. Oh boy, is there a lot contained in that, etc. Present, that a protein compound was chemically formed, ready to undergo still more complex changes. That at the present, if that happened, it would be instantly devoured. And then he assumed that they would not have been devoured before living creatures existed. But of course, that's not true either. But that statement in yellow there, oh boy, a protein compound, which ones, of what kind, for what purpose, how long does it last, how did it come about, was chemically formed. What does that mean? What is this process by which a protein compound was chemically formed? So all the interesting and important detail is utterly obliterated in favor of just generic, generalized statements that essentially contain no information, no insight. Ready to undergo, ready? Meaning hangs around long enough or something, I don't know. Still more complex changes. By what mechanisms does this happen? And this is all before the discovery of the double helix of the DNA strand, which consists of what? What does DNA consist of? The helix? Exactly. And what are they made of? Proteins, right? Proteins. But now you're into a level of complexity right there. You go from proteins to the aggregation of them into something more useful. What are the four? There's four different. Is that the ATP thing?
No, ATP is energy. DNA is made of GCTNA, and I cannot remember.
GCTNA. On we go. On we go.
The rest of us are staring blankly.
Right.
Vastly. He questioned whether it could be resolved in his day. And what we have found out is that it's vastly more complex than what they thought in his day. Anyway, that's the quote. That's the hunt for the creation. That's their creation story. That's the myth that's their creation myth. Talk about evolutionists are going to call Genesis 1 the Christian creation myth. My response is, our myth is looking pretty good because I'm reading your myth. And I don't think you guys have come very much far beyond this right here. It's not like they've been able to put a lot of meat on these bones. So, I'll take my myth. We're gonna look at another myth probably in a little bit, but I'll take my myth over your myth. If you want to debate the merits of said myths, then that's happened many, many times. Oh, more, huh? Wow. No problem. Appreciate it. Okay. Well, anyway, that's it's advantageous to sort of read some of this stuff. You'll see this a lot in literature where all the important stuff is reduced down to a very simple generalized statement, which practically communicates nothing, which is exactly the case here. Basically, this is saying, but if we could conceive of something happening that we can't describe in the least, and oh, what a big if, and if this something happened, then, we'd have life. And that's roughly a paraphrase of what I'm reading right now. And I don't think they can do a lot better than this today. Or in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So we have a prime mover. The difference between evolutionary theory is not, as an explanatory device, evolution is it's not a claim about explaining the creation of things, not even the first cell, not even the origin of life. That's a whole different realm of discussion, but about the evolution of life, given its origin. So it's really kind of an explanation for the history of life with this gigantic void at the beginning of it where there is no creation story. And, people just, well, it must have happened. It must have happened because here we are. The Christians do the same thing. Well, God must have created the heavens and the earth because here we are. What's the difference? From a scientific standpoint, which of those two statements has more scientific merit? And the answer is neither one of them has more scientific merit. It's arguing into a void. Okay. I wonder where
faith comes in.
in either case, yeah. In either case. But they control the world of science like, I don't know, more than like most churches are controlled by their leadership. The scientific community, by mutual consent, maintains a vice grip of orthodoxy on the question of the evolution of life. And if you're a scientist who doubts that, you better keep your mouth shut. Okay, I think we got to, now that I forgot my notes and I got to remember. Thank you, Laura, for, yeah.
We started on, we did 10 or 13 last week, so.
Oh, okay. Then we are somewhere around 14.
14,
All right. Last week's conversation was interesting too. These are generating a lot of interesting conversation. And I mean conversation. A lot of people have things to say. I usually listen to the last week, which I did this morning, listen to last week's feed in preparation for this one. Also to see if I said anything that I need to correct myself on. So that's our third day. There's a structure going on, which I haven't talked about, I don't think. And it looks like this. Call it a parallelism. This is a masterfully woven literary product. And you can see it here in the parallelism. Hebrews did this a lot. The Jews did this a lot in Old Testament writing. It takes a bit to notice it, but you have on the first day, you have light from darkness, separation, and then on a corresponding day, you're going to have the issue of that part of the creative process taken up. So on the fourth day, you get the creation of the luminous bodies, sun, moon, and stars. And I was looking at something I put in my notes about the Enuma Elish, which is the Babylonian creation epic, which I had open. For some reason, I closed it. This should be a safe search. Yeah, so I was looking at this. Basically, it comes down to the god Marduk, I think, was the instigator of there was wars between the gods. There was gods being created out of, I don't know, physical bodies. Procreation of gods, and out of this chaos, there's this chaos of creation, much like in Genesis 1, a watery abyss, a watery chaos. And if you read this article, they're going to say, well, that's the creation story in Genesis 1 is a retelling of that. And my response is not even close. It's a refutation of it. It's taking the same thought and refuting what these idolatrous nations believed about how this creation happened. And that's why you read about a watery mass and God hovering over it, and then speaking into existence the order that we see around us, where there is no reference to those luminous bodies, sun, moon, and stars, representing or being abodes of gods. It's very, very deliberate. There's no ritual, there's no nothing. And so here, whoops. Here you see it with these, I wonder how you get rid of that. But anyway, Marduk, I think it's Marduk, fashioned heavenly stations for the great gods. You ain't reading that in Genesis chapter 1. In fact, if you read Genesis chapter 1, it's almost an afterthought. Look at verse 16. We'll get to it in a second. He made the two great lights, the greater light to govern the day. They're not even described as physical bodies. They're the great lights, the greater light and the lesser light. And then almost as an afterthought, what they thought of as the great gods of the universe, the stars. Oh, and he made the stars also. It's just an afterthought. And I think that's probably deliberate. But that's, depends on how you look at it, I guess. I look at it and I go, that's not a retelling of this. Sure, I am happy to believe that all the peoples of the ancient Near East believed that everything came from a watery mass. So, the writer of Genesis 1 has in mind where they're going in Canaan and what those people believe and the idolatry that's associated with it. So he writes his own story with an eye to that. And it's basically a full-scale assault on it. I think that's probably what's going on. But to say that it's a retelling of, it is borrowed from the Babylonian myth, first of all, there's no evidence of that other than a couple of details like that. In, when this was written, the Babylonians, I don't even know, we're in the late Bronze Age? Where were the Babylonians? I mean, the Jews were in the desert and then in Canaan. The Babylonians didn't control Canaan. So you got to make that up. You got to assume that. At any rate, a little more to it than the pop culture. They say this stuff rather confidently. They just say it. Well, the book of Genesis borrows from, is dependent on, retells. They just say it. Well, wait a minute. Hold on a minute. Let's think about that. Let's see if it holds water, what you just said, and oftentimes it doesn't. But that's that. Now let's go back and read it. We're on the fourth day, right? Yeah. Then God said, "Let there be lights in the expanse of the heavens to separate the day from the night." So we're back to separation again, differentiation. "And let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years." And remember, there was light from darkness on day one, God separated the light from the darkness. Now he's separating day from night, because now we have a sun. So now we can begin to talk about an earth revolving around a sun and things become a pattern, things become uniform, things become regular. You know, we're moving our way towards 7 days in a week, and then finally the Sabbath day. So that's, you can even see that part of the theology of the Pentateuch, the first 5 books. You can even see that the theology coming into focus right here. And certainly the Jews would have thought that way. And let them be for lights in the expanse of the heavens, to give light on the earth, and it was so. And God made the 2 great lights, not bodies, and also God made them. Not they just were there as gods. God, the one God, made these 2 great lights. So there is no deity involved in those lights. The greater light to govern the day and the lesser light to govern the night. He made the stars also. And God placed them in the expanse of the heavens to give light on the earth. They have a purpose, and it's geocentric. The purpose of the sun, which he doesn't use here, I don't think. He never refers to it. Or the moon. Those are both gods in Egyptian and Canaanite idolatry. Those are both gods. So he doesn't mention them, probably. God placed them in the expanse of the heavens to give light on the earth. It's geocentric and it's teleological. It has purpose or design behind it. There's a reason that the sun exists. If somebody asks the question, why does the sun exist? From an evolutionary standpoint, the answer is because it hasn't burned out yet. It hasn't used up all of its energy or something like that. If you ask the theologian, why does the sun exist? The answer is, at its most basic level, to give light on the earth, to enable, for example, vegetation and the life on earth, to enable life on earth. And to govern the day and the night, to separate, there's separation again, the light from the darkness, and God saw that it was good. There was evening and there was morning, day 4, corresponding to day 1. Does anybody want to say anything about this so far? I just talked I'm doing pretty good, but it was good, 5 or 6 or 7 minutes.
Well, I think it's fascinating the fact that we wait until the 4th day to create the sun and the moon when God created the light, the darkness to separate the day and the night.
If you were going to write this, do that sometime. Be as objective as you can. It's like trying to play bridge when you can see everybody else's hand, and you have to play it honestly, as if you didn't know. How would I play this if? Well, if you didn't have this account, and you were going to write the plan for the creation of the heavens and the earth, what would it look like? What will be the ordering? How would it look? I guarantee you it would not look like this. Okay. So they got this geocentric nature of things. The universe unfolds, geo meaning this, centric to this. The teleology, the design, and the purpose of the thing is centered on the what is going on the earth and with the creation of the earth. And so all this stuff around us, sun, moon, and stars, and so forth, and everything else, is just what it is, so that life can exist on this planet the way that it does. There's a thing in science called the anthropic principle. Has anybody heard of this? They have to acknowledge it because it's unavoidable. Let's see. Let me give you some paraphrases to this, because it's said in many different ways, but I think Hawking was the one in his book who said, I should go hunt this down so I don't get it wrong. But basically the universe appears to have been designed with human life in mind. And so how to explain the teleology, the design from the Greek word telos, purpose. How do we explain that it just is awfully coincidental that so much in the universe has to be just what it is in order for life on planet Earth to exist? And scientists have noticed it and have tried many ways to deal with it. Because one of the things that you can never have in the world of modern science is the admission of design. Because design implies designer, designer implies creator, who is by definition outside the realm of research, study. So that's a word and a half. Teleology, basically the study of purpose or design or the design of things. So, you know, there's this, you have young earth creationists, of which I am. And you have that argument, but then you have also, you don't need that to argue against evolutionary theory or origin of life research. And so this whole new thing has popped up called intelligent design. It's an intelligent design arguments, which simply doesn't bother with arguing the 7-day creation week. Basically, they're saying whether we believe that or not, we don't need that to deal with the question of evolution. And these writings, these people writing on intelligent design, Doug, I don't know if you've ever read any of that stuff, but absolutely devastating. Really, a lot of Christians don't like it, but I don't really see the harm in it. And man, they're tough to deal with because they're being published by big, important publishing houses it can no longer be avoided. I read a book in the 90s called The Creation Hypothesis, which actually I mentioned J.P. Moreland a couple times. I think he was the editor of it, but it's individual articles, it's essays, it's chapter by chapter with different authors on the question of intelligent design. And, you know, I remember him saying back in the 90s when I had his class, I was a TA in Fort Collins, Colorado, on staff with Crusade. I remember him saying, this is coming. This is before the intelligent design thing really lit up. And, you know, he said about that book and about what was going on. He said there's a whole new, I remember him saying there's a whole new generation of philosophers that are coming up, Christian philosophers that are going to be devastating for modern science to deal with. And they will not, he said something like they will not be ignored. They cannot be ignored or so. That's exactly what's happened. But anyway, you can see, get used to those words. I'll probably use them again. Just think purpose-driven design and so forth. Teleology. You know, there's even an argument for the existence of God from, it's called the teleological argument. You have these different arguments. You have the cosmological argument, others, but teleological argument is one of them. It's very, very difficult to erase the imprint. It just screams out at you of design or purpose. Design implies purpose. Design implies purpose. So if a system appears to be designed, pick one. They're all around you. They're everywhere, including you. Usually designers design things for a purpose, and they are to be used, it is expected, for that purpose, which of course brings in the question of the fall of man. And we have violated our teleological origin. The origin of life was for the purpose of something that God determined, and sin marred that. And God is in the process through redemptive history over the top of human history of rectifying that situation. So once again, the universe fulfills his purpose from top to bottom, side to side, beginning to end, inside and out. And that is redemption. The redemption is not something that speaks simply of the forgiveness of sins. That's reductionist. Redemption speaks of teleology. You can see it strongly in Romans 8. We know that the creation, verse 22, speaking of the marring and the setting things right. Let's start in 20. For the creation was subjected to frustration, futility, vanity, not by its own choice, but by the will of the one who subjected it. We were driven away. We were reprobated. Adam will be driven out of the garden. The 4 laws, Campus Crusade, which I used for many years, is not right. Man is sinful God wanted to have a relationship with man or something like that. But man is sinful and separated from God, and chose to go his own way. That's inaccurate at best. It's the other way around. Adam will be driven from the garden. He will have no say in the matter. God will make a judicial decree. You will see it. Behold, the man has become like one of us, knowing good and evil. Let us do this. And the man was driven from the garden. That's the way it's going to be. And so there it is. In hope that the creation itself will be liberated, set free from its bondage to decay, corruption, and brought into the freedom and glory of the children of God in their redemptive. All of the creation will participate. I thought this didn't sound right. I like NIV, but a long time ago, I've read this so many times, I stumble over my own words when I try to read it in another translation. Now I've lost where I am.
There's one.
Thank you. For the creation was subjected to fertility, not willingly, but because of him who subjected it, and hope that the creation itself will also be set free from its slavery to corruption. Nice word, slavery. Uncontrollability, inevitability, irresistibility. There's nothing you can do about it. You are corrupted, and you cannot fix it. You can be fixed, but you cannot fix yourself. You are participating in that horrific consignment of Adam to something that we call reprobation, which I'm not even sure what that means, but I like the word. It sounds cool. So, into the freedom of the glory of the children of God, which is redemption. For we know that the whole creation groans and suffers the pains of childbirth together until now. You can see that sense of anticipation that the grand redemptive project, teleology, will eventually and soon come to completion, and all of creation will be set right, will become teleologically back on track. But also we ourselves, having the first fruits of the Spirit, even we ourselves grown within ourselves, waiting eagerly for our adoption as sons, the redemption of our body. One of the final acts of that is the corrupted body will change and become a resurrected body, even as Jesus was. So that's teleology. It's all over the place. The universe isn't right until it is and fulfilling its purpose, which is whatever the purpose is that God has ordained for it. And he will not be denied in that project. There's nothing anybody can do to stop it. You can participate in it by his grace, but you cannot stop it. And lots and lots of people are trying to stop it. There's a movement, or there was, called the New Atheists. I think Richard Dawkins was one of them. He wrote a book called The Blind Watchmaker, which I read a long time ago. But they have this idea that they want to basically to eradicate faith. Faith is a big problem. They may have changed their minds. In light of the change of things, what's going on today, man, those Christians we used to argue with, we had a pretty good deal with them from them because we both believed in science. We both believed, and we could talk with those people. But this new crowd, where you're racist if you practice a certain kind of math or something, we can't really deal with those people, and they don't like us. So they want us cast out too. Well, that's where the Christians are. Well, wait a minute, we're gonna be cast out where the Christians are? I don't think so. But anyway, they have this idea that faith needs to be like faith is the great evil. My first response to that is, well, you're fighting evolution, even by your own system. The reason you're doing this is because atheism lost. There ain't no atheists, for all intents and purposes. If you're right, the evolution of life selected for faith, because everybody has it, which you don't like. You're fighting your own beliefs. You're fighting you're fighting that which is irresistible. The irresistible evolution of life on planet Earth. And you think you're going to twist the arrow of evolution towards this loser that lost, atheism. It ain't going to happen. And it doesn't matter anyway, because better men than you, who are smarter than you and stronger than you and more ruthless than you, have tried to eradicate faith. And here we are. Joseph Stalin, Mao Zedong. And that's just recent. So have at it. I'm not the least bit worried. And here's the Bible, still here with us today, after everything that's happened over the last 2,000 years. Okay, that's my rant. Does anybody want to talk about my rant? Probably not gonna back down from any of that.
The Bible is still the number one told happening book in the whole world, so.
I would have said it's the Quran. Although Quran is only in Arabic, right? So you can put it on your shelf. Do they have English translations of the Quran? No, I'm really ignorant. No, I'm really ignorant. I don't know. They do? I would have said it's the Quran then. Not that I know.
I think it's interesting, C.S. Lewis Chronicles of Narnia, how he deals with the restoration of creation, the animals and all creation being brought back into right relationship
Right.
with man. That's just, it's a great story.
Yeah, the important point being that he will recover everything that is his. He's not trying to make the best of a bad situation. Well, maybe I can save some of the humans. That's not what he's doing. He's gonna redeem the whole thing, and that's Revelation. I saw a new heaven and a new earth, and so on and so forth. If you ask the naturalist why there is atheist evolutionist, why there is a sun and moon, he must reply with the same kind of answer he would give as to why a leaf lands where it does. The forces of nature make it so. It's the brute authority of the lifeless, soulless, cold forces of nature who don't care about you. I quoted this from somebody, I don't know who it is. The movement of a leaf has direction, but it has no purpose. There is no teleology to it. And so as far as the problems that you encounter in life, if the question is asked, why did this happen to me? You were born with a genetic defect that caused this. That's his answer, the non-teleological one. The explanation of the process. That's all the naturalistic world can give you. An explanation, and it's weak at best. Yeah, an explanation of the process by which it came to be. Now, in the real world, they can't live that way. They're going to be searching for purpose. Very often. Let's see, the teleology behind the creation on day 4, forgot where we are now. Let's see, the sun, moon, and stars is so important. He repeats it the other way around. And we're pushing towards the creation of the humans, the man and the woman. He doesn't use the term sun and moon. I think that's probably deliberate. I probably wasn't the first one to notice that. I probably got that out of a commentary. Did you read Victor Hamilton's commentary on Genesis?
I'm not.
It's pretty good. That's the one, he throws the book at you. That's the only commentary on Genesis I've read, but I haven't read it recently. It is, he uses the name for them that implies their purpose, lights. But of course, a star, its purpose isn't to shed light from a naturalistic standpoint. It has no purpose. It just simply is shedding light. If you ask the Christian, why does the sun shed its light? The answer is so that we can have life on earth. If you ask a naturalist, why does the sun shed light? He will get into the details of the chemical processes involved in it and the speed of light. And the fact that it hits the earth is just a happy accident, very happy accident for the people that live on earth. Okay, that's all I got to say about day 4. Anybody want to illumine? No pun intended.
Sort of your theory about, light travel through space. There's these places that can't really explain how it got there so fast. And some people were theorizing that there was a extreme first somewhere in the beginning. So somehow you need basically space, something that's high enough that it transmits light faster than their thought. And my thought was, if that's true, isn't that like pushing light out to the point where they were trying to show how light got someplace it shouldn't be already, and it was going faster. But if we were believing that the idea makes the world, makes everything sound younger than it actually is, or if they have been claiming.
Were these Christians?
No, these were just some people trying to explain how light got to places we can't explain yet.
That would be interesting if the scientific world had to come to grips with the idea that light is someplace where it shouldn't be, like they've always complained about the Christians saying about light coming to earth.
And
That would be,
something I've been kind of struggling with for a while, like I said, that there was a moment of absolute way too much heat in my bottle, but maybe.
it would also imply that, it would also imply that C is not sacred. C is not sacred, the speed of light.
Yes, that was their issue, because they're claiming that also means that gravity doesn't work the way we think it does. Because, that means that it's not just bending of time space to draw things to itself.
Yeah, that's an interesting, there was a book called, I've already talked about A Brief History of Time, but there was another one called About Time by Kip Thorne. I think it was Kip Thorne. That's also excellent. I read that a long time ago too.
Where are you reading them?
Oh. Oh, goodness, what was the name? Hold on.
That's pretty interesting.
Let me
Yeah, it
see
is.
if I can find it again. I can't remember now. This was a few days ago at least. Let me see if I can find it. I'll try to get it after.
That would be a real problem for the scientific community. It could mean that we're not too far away from the warp drive like they had in Star Trek, if that's true. If you watch the movie Forbidden, you got it? If you watch the world Forbidden Planet from the 1950s, Leslie Nielsen plays what will be, he was the precursor to Kirk. But this movie called Forbidden Planet, where it's space age, where they travel to a distant planet. You will find so much about that movie that Star Trek ripped off. Yeah, it is. But that's one of them. Only it's called a hyperdrive. I think it's called a hyperdrive in Forbidden Planet, and it becomes a warp drive. Well, I'll just interrupt if you find it. Let's move on to 20. If we're done there. So we have now
So all those things before verse 20 needed to be in order for verse 20 to happen.
yeah. Well, this is interesting. This is the switch here is interesting because vegetation is created on the third day, but the sun is not created until the fourth day.
But there was light.
And I'm going back to my previous argument. We're already down the rabbit hole of a creator. Creator can do anything he wants. If he has the power to do verse 1, are we really going to quibble about the order here? Well, I know he can. Okay, he created the heavens and the earth, but he can't pull this off where he creates vegetation before the sun. You know,
Well, they just need the light, and he made the sun, moon, and stars for specific markings for the people who are to come,
yes,
seasons.
yep, all of that is coming. That's correct. Once you get an earth, once you
So
get an
the-
earth,
the sun in itself is not the one providing our sun that is out there in the sky, is the one that we get light from now, but it was from God.
yeah, we can fill in some holes there. We can fill in some blanks there. I'm not sure how to fill those blanks in. To me, it doesn't matter so much. I mean, when you're in the realm of the miraculous, well, what do you mean Jesus turned water into wine? It would have to be this compound and that, and then, and I'm going. You're trying to find a naturalistic explanation for a miracle? You know, I've heard that about the resurrection story. Well, you know, after 3 days, he would have been decomposed already, so there's no way that God could resurrect him from the dead. What are you talking about? you either believe in miracles. Science excludes the very possibility of miracles, so everything requires a naturalistic answer. There cannot be a resurrection from the dead. Case closed. Day 5. Then God said, let the waters teem with swarms of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth in the open expanse of the heavens. And God created the great sea monsters and every living creature that moves, with which the waters swarmed after their kind, and every winged bird after its kind. And God saw that it was good. God blessed them, this is new, saying, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the seas, and let birds multiply on the earth. And there was evening and there was morning, a 5th day. So you can see this refutation of idolatry again, right here where it says, every living creature that moves, nothing is left out. You Egyptians who worship the golden calf, you Hebrews who just got done worshiping the golden calf, or whatever, what are the golden frogs and the Philistines, I don't remember. But that idolatry was very often based in the worship of living things. And it's just excluded right there in a single phrase. There's nothing left out. Every living creature is a created thing beneath its God. So here we have, back to this. The 2nd day, we have separation of waters from the waters. And now we see those waters below. The waters below are teeming with living things, and the waters above, the sky, are teeming with living things. I left one out right there. I'm not going to fix it right now. The birds. I presume the birds would be included in the realm of the waters above. Near Eastern creation myths speak of great battles between gods and pre-existing monsters, and between gods and gods, so on and so forth. They don't compete with this God. This God calls himself their creator. There's none of this, none of that wars between sea monsters and gods in this. This is the first time God has spoken to his creation in some fashion like this. Be fruitful and multiply and fill the waters in the seas, and let birds multiply on the earth. He didn't speak to the plants, even though the plants are just as capable, have no disadvantage over the animals in understanding what God is saying, or do they? I don't know, back in those days. First time God has issued a blessing. And that's about it. So there it is. Now this is a hard and fast break after this in verse 26. But that's the creation of. Did we finish it? Yeah, 5th day. All right. So that's the seas. There's not a complexity ordering of things. We don't move like we do in evolutionary thought from the less complex to the more complex. So when you look at a geologic column over hundreds of millions of years, what you would expect to see is, as you move up the geologic column, you see increasing levels of complexity on the part of the living creatures found in them. Turns out that's not true. But that has to be the case. Because you can't have, you don't build less complexity. Well, anyway, that's what I'm just trying to, can you build less complexity on top of more complexity? You can, if you have extinctions and stuff like that and you start over, but you would see that in the geologic column too. But generally speaking, they are wedded to the idea that as you move up the geologic column, which doesn't exist anywhere in the world completely, so they have to put it together. And I don't know how you do that without your preconceived notions, like climate change and, human caused climate change, how your preconceived notions how to keep your preconceived notions about that from infecting your reading of the data. It just seems like you'd have to be incredibly objective about that. But here, we're not moving from less ordered to more ordered. I gotta change this word now that I think about it. I've been using this word, it's a work in progress. I'm gonna change that word right there, okay, ordered. Purposed. I'll redo this, purposed. Which is really what I mean. We're moving from chaos, meaning useless, from a teleological standpoint. We're moving from chaos to fit to serve God's purpose. Something like that, yeah. I have here, that implies moving from less complex to more complex, but that's not what I mean by this. So we are about to arrive here at the peak, the pristine creation, just in time for man to ruin it temporarily. '26, let's read this. A little observation here. I forgot the numbers. There's 790 words in this chapter, and 218 of them are the sixth day, 27% or some number like that. I forget what it is. So even with regard to the amount of text that's dedicated, you can see it even, when you look at this 26 to 31. Nothing gets as much text as 26 to 31. But really, it's 24 to 31. Oh, you know what? It's more words than that. Be more words than that. I forgot about this part up here. But you can see even by the amount of text devoted to it, the point here is to land on the man and the woman. God said, let's see, let the earth bring forth living creatures after their kind, cattle and creeping things and beasts of the earth after their kind. And it was so. And God made the beasts of the earth after their kind, and the cattle after their kind, and everything that creeps on the ground after its kind. Why are we worshiping whatever it is we're worshiping? And God saw that it was good. So time out for a God saw that it was good, but he's not done. That's not its own day. Then God said, and now it's separated. Now it's on its own. That was good. The creation of the animals was good, but this is going to be even better. And that will be highlighted at the end of it. Then God said, let us make man in our own image, according to our likeness, and let them rule over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the sky, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. What business does a human have of worshiping any of these things whom God specifically decreed that they should rule over? It is a wholesale assault on idolatry, period, end of story. And God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. You get a wonderful, what do you call that, reversal right there. God created man in his image. In his image, he created him. Male and female, he created them. Thrice-fold statement. God blessed them, and God said, be fruitful and multiply, just like he did before. And fill the earth and subdue it, he adds. So again, what business do the humans have of creating idols out of the things that they were meant to rule over? And rule over the fish of the sea, boy, here it is again, over the birds of the sky. If you ask the question, why is he so intent on highlighting and emphasizing the point that man is to rule over? Why would he do that, the author? Why is it the inspired author? What's the point? What's the teleology of it? And I think it has to do with their penchant for idolatry and where they're going. You do not worship that which you rule over. That's embedded in the creation story, right where it belongs, teleology. The creation was the way it was. It was meant to be the way that it was so that humans would rule over and therefore not worship these things. And you're going to see Paul focus on that too. And then we got to stop. Oops, got every letter wrong. with this statement here. Verse 22, professing to be wise, they became fools and exchanged the glory of the incorruptible God for an image in the form of corruptible man and of birds and of four-footed creatures, or animals and crawling creatures, all those things that God specifically said you shall rule over. Then God said, behold, I have given you every plant yielding seed that is on the earth on the surface of all the earth, and every tree which has fruit yielding seed, it shall be food for you. And to every beast of the earth, and to every bird of the sky, and to everything that moves on the earth which has life, I have given every green plant for food. And it was so. And God saw all that he made, and behold, that was good. The beasts, this is very good. And of course, he's looking probably maybe at the whole thing, but with specifically in mind the man and the woman. And there was evening and there was morning the sixth day. And so you can see the teleology. Why do these things exist? In the first place, for the benefit of man and not the other way around. So that's a lot of teleology. Purpose. Design and purpose. Design not in terms of complexity, but design in terms of the system and how it functions for a particular purpose. This is an entire system that the earth is, its system, and the sun and the moon, because you wouldn't have life on earth without a moon either, in case you didn't know that. But the whole system functions to get to this point where it becomes habitable and fit for the man and the woman so that God can accomplish his will through them and their progeny. And it'll turn out what he wants to accomplish really is the redemption of a remnant. Eventually, that will include the Gentiles. So we'll go ahead and stop there. A little different, looking at it, Genesis chapter 1 from a little different angle. There's a lot of ways to study this, but that's probably one you're probably not gonna hear very often. So that's the one I went with. Anybody want the last word? Doug, you want the last word?
I think that's fascinating. Thank you. Well done.
I also think it's fascinating, the fact that in chapter 1, it says they created male and female, when you created male
Yes.
on the sixth day, and then it was days, weeks, who knows, nobody knows for sure when female came into the picture, but he added them, chapter 1, that he was gonna make,
Yep.
make them.
Yeah, beware of being too systematic and precise about exactly what's going on in Genesis chapter 1. In fact, there's so much the case that critical scholars, biblical scholars, non-Christian ones, would say this is two different creation stories that are seamed together poorly. Some of them say poorly. But we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that when we get there. All right, then we'll go ahead and stop.
Thanks, Gary.
Yeah, enjoyed it. Thanks, Naomi.